Very good. Good evening, everybody. Thank you all for being here. We're happy to have Read It Again Books with us there in the corner with the pretty table. Yeah, let's give them a round of applause. Please visit their table if you'd like to purchase a book to have signed after the talk. And moderating to this evening's talk is Gabrielle Dudley. Which one is Gabrielle Dudley? Who knows? Okay, yeah. Gabrielle is an archivist and librarian with a passion for preserving and sharing stories that illuminate Black history and culture. She also is the creator of the Gabrielle Guide, a lifestyle and wellness platform for Black women, where she shares her love of books, travel, and intentional living. And she will be in conversation with our featured guest and friend to Gwinnett County Public Library, Jeannine Cook. Let's give her a round of applause. Jeannine A. Cook is the founder and owner of 3 avant-garde bookshop concepts, Harriet's in Philadelphia, Ida's in South Jersey, and Josephine's, a literary installation in Paris. She holds an MFA from Drexel University, and her first novel, titled It's Me They Follow, was published last year. This evening, she will be discussing her memoir titled Shut Up and Read. Let's give them a round of applause again. Thank you.
It's so good to be with you.
It's like I feel like a family reunion. We were just together 6 months ago.
We really were. We really were. So it's really great to share the stage with you again, and especially for this like really powerful memoir. I've really, really enjoyed it, and if you haven't read it, I know that you'll enjoy it too.
Now, what if you didn't though? Like, what if you didn't like it at all? What happens?
You know what?
What would we do up here?
You know what? We'll have to have a talk. Right. If you didn't, we'll have to talk afterwards because I have to know what their thought process was.
Thank goodness.
Okay,
Thank
so you start the memoir off with a really powerful quote. You say, "I refuse to die with this story stuck in me."
And now this doctor wants to slice open my throat.
Yes, that's exactly what you say. Remember your first lines.
You know how many times I read that line? Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Okay, can you tell us what this memoir is about and why now was the time why this was the right time to publish it?
Yes. So first I gotta say thank yous. Thank you to the library folks. Thank you to librarian Gina, who was just like, she came to Philly one day and was like, basically we gonna work together, and has kept that promise. And it's nothing like a librarian, who's like, they just make things happen. And then of course to you, because, we did this 6 months ago and I was like, it was so good, let's just do it again. Just do the same thing, all of it. And even like my sound friends who get me together in the back and deal with my nervous energies. And then of course to all of you for, showing up, child. Because if it's one person or 300, I gotta do the same thing. And so it's nice when there's somebody to look out in the audience and see folks and see people. So I appreciate that. I always have to start with my one thing before we go, which is whose shoulders do we stand on? And it is good to ground the conversation in why that works for this particular book. So whose shoulders, every time we go anywhere, I ask that question, whose shoulders do you stand on? Who makes it possible for you to be here today? And folks take that question in a lot of different directions. I laugh because when I'm in France, folks are like, I don't stand on the shoulders, I'm standing on the ground, and I'm like, yes, that too. But more metaphorically, of course, right? And so this book, just as context, is standing on the shoulders of several people. It's, of course, I must always pay homage to Miss Harriet. I think the part of the reason that we even get to do any of this is because of Miss Harriet, that she continues to inspire and she meets me halfway. And if if she gives me a little signal, she's still running the Underground Railroad in her own way, in my opinion. And then I also believe that a part of the shoulders I stand on for this particular book is my father. And the fact that, almost all my life, my father was telling me I was a writer. He was like, you want to do all this community stuff, you want to help the community, you want to help the people, He was like, but you're a writer, you're supposed to be writing. And I think that listening to him say that for many, many years, and then finally kind of answering, him calling on the phone with that and me finally answering the call, grounds this book, and it provides for whose shoulders I stand on. This book tells you it gives you a short insight, only over the course of 4 months. You start in July, you end in October, of life in Harriet's bookshop. But life in Harriet's bookshop is pretty intense sometimes. And so the book takes you on a journey kind of across the globe in those 4 months, and also across a very vast emotional landscape in those 4 months. And so that's kind of where that lives. Now, whose shoulders do you stand on? And then for the people who weren't here before, they don't know that they're going to also answer that question in a little bit. But you go ahead.
I will say the first person that last time I said my sister, but this time I'll say my mom. And that may sound easy, but I really had a real appreciation for my mom. I had surgery at the beginning of February, and I was like, oh, I don't want my mom to come. I don't want my mom to come. I'm going to be okay. And baby, let me tell you,
you're like, Mom!
There is nobody that could have been there besides my mama. I was like, thank God you're here, Mama. But my mom, she's just such a sweet, loving, and generous person, like generous with her time. She didn't have to come and stay with me for a week, but she did. And I think that she would do that for anybody that needed help. So I stand on her shoulders, and I try to, give that generosity to others for sure.
All right, so like I gave y'all a little forewarning, and for the folks who was here before, y'all already know what the deal is. But for the newbies, you'll find out right now, which is that I'll invite you to turn to a neighbor, even if you work here, even if you're a staff person, if you're selling the books, if you're the sound person, and answer that question very briefly. I'll give you 1 minute. I usually have a bell, and I'm like, ding, 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 ding. I forgot my bell, y'all. But I don't, so I'll just do it myself. I'll be the bell. I'll ding, ding, ding. When your 1 minute is up. And your 1 minute could start right now. Whose shoulders do you stand on? Yes. And don't leave it, don't let anybody be left out. Georgia is so, look at y'all in Georgia. In Philly, I'm like, ding, 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 ding. And everybody's just like, ding. Okay, but Georgia is not that, thank goodness.
We're in Gwinnett County.
Yeah, okay, all right. Oh, okay. All right. Librarian Jeannine knew where to send me. Can I get 1 or 2 people who might be open to sharing? Whose shoulders do you stand on? Yes, please, if you don't. Go ahead. If you don't mind standing up.
I recently discovered a man named Listervelt Middleton. Very unique name. He's got to be the only one. But he created a show on PBS in the 80s, and I discovered it on YouTube. And he teaches Black history, a lot of names that I never would have known. John Herrick Clark, Marimba Ani, Sheikh Antadia. Had them over on interviews, and they're continuing to teach people through YouTube. So I think that's cool.
Can you say the name again one more time?
Listervelt Middleton.
Okay.
So right. The show is called For the People.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right. 1 more, 2 more. Go ahead, friend. You getting voluntold.
I said my husband, because a lot of people's spouse, you got to go home, cook, do all these things, you work full time. He, on the way home, he said, I got to stop at KFC to get coleslaw. I have fish to cook, and y'all be on your way. So I stand on his shoulders, because it was no issue for me to come and just be here where I wanted to be.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Can you just thank the person who was listening to you? Yes.
Thank you.
And the person who was sharing with you.
Thank you for sharing.
And that's also, I do it, but I also do it with the idea in mind of the fact that the book is called Shut Up and Read. And, you know, when we first approached the publishers with that title, it was like, oh, that's a little aggressive, you know, Jeannine, that's, but a part of the reason it's called Shut Up and Read is because, you know, I'm hoping that through this work, we get folks a little bit stronger in our listening. I think we've gotten to a point where we're pretty good at expressing ourselves and saying what's on our mind, and social media really helped with that. But now we get to practice being better and better listeners. And so that's listening to ourselves, right? There's that inner calling that's coming from deep within. When there's not so much noise and distraction, you can hear it better. There's like listening to each other. Not trying to talk to just so you can hop in, and then also listening to something perhaps much higher than all of that. And so that'll get us started. So just so y'all know now, this is not just me talking up here. It's all of us. So we're gonna all be talking. Go ahead. Yes, sir. Sorry, go ahead.
No, but I really think that's a really good segue into like one of the things that really comes out really well in this memoir is that you knew what you wanted to do, and you were like, you had a vision, and when you had a vision, you kept on with that vision. And I would almost say, like, I think your father even told you, like, Jeannine, or number two, you're a fighter. And like, what kept that fight in you? Like, what kept you towards that vision?
Yeah, so in the book, so it's 3 sisters, and my dad doesn't call us by our names. He calls us by our birth orders. And of course, I'm number 2. And I say to him, Dad, you know, it works for Jazzy and Janelle, but number 2 is something else too. And he's just like, oh, shut up, you know. But the fight, I think it does go back to the call. It goes back to, you know, sometimes something starts off as a whisper in your spirit, and then that whisper starts to like grow and grow and grow to the point where it's a roar. And I believe that Miss Harriet kind of speaks in that way. When I spend time looking at her record and what she did here on this earth. That she was a person who, like, if you want to walk with Miss Harriet, it's to understand what does it mean to keep going when there are dogs on your back? What does it mean to keep going when there's a bounty on your head? What does it mean to keep going when it's the colder winter? What does it mean to keep going when, you know, like under severe and extreme circumstances? And when I look at the things that have happened in my life, none of it compares to the things that she kept going through. And that's, you know, many of our ancestors, right, had that same fierce sense of urgency. So I'm walking in a tradition. It's not like I'm walking it alone. I'm just carrying out, you know, I think my part in the tradition.
Yeah. So another thing about the memoir is that it was really epistolary in nature. You write these letters to yourself, you write letters to Miss Harriet, you write letters to Miss Josephine and others. But I really think it was also like a love letter to books, and also to Philly in a way. And I, you know, for the people that don't know, and you're talking about like, you know, this fight and this, you know, movement forward, there were a lot of things that tried to get in the way of Harriet's bookshop. Can you talk to us about, you know, how Harriet's bookshop came to be, how you actually came to own the building, and why Philadelphia?
So many pieces to that. I mean, I also always draw the parallel between, like Miss Harriet came to Philadelphia as her freedom place, right? That was her first place where she experienced what she considered to be freedom. And I thought it was so interesting that it's also the place where I felt like I got to experience freedom. I came from Hampton, Virginia. At 17, I moved to Philadelphia on somebody else's kind of dream. Somebody else, my best friend wanted to move to Philadelphia. And on one of our treks, because after school, we would leave high school and drive 5 hours to another city. And she was just so bold and so, and I was not, right? I was like, I'm going to school in Virginia, child. I don't know about all that. And I go to one of her open houses at the University of Arts in Philly. I get there, and I'm sitting in a corner. I'm a shy kid. I know folks see me places and they're like, oh, no, not really. I really am like more introverted than it seems. And she goes on and like she's working the room doing her thing, meeting people. I'm sitting in a corner. I meet a guy. The guy who I meet, he's trying to convince me that I need to go like talk and look around, blah blah blah. I finally do. By the end of our conversation, he's like, "You should apply to the school." And I'm like, "No, thank you." You know what I mean? I'm already accepted in the school. Thank you. And he's like, "Yo, you really should consider it." I consider it, right? Her and I apply together. I get accepted into the school. She does not. Right. And so now you have two best friends. We've been friends since we were 8 years old. What do we do? And you can read the book, so you could.
Yes.
You'll see where it takes you. But that being said, it did take me to Philadelphia, which is kind of like my land of freedom, my first opening up into that space. As a student at that same university, I used to sell books in front of the school. I would set up a table. I wanted to have this club that worked in the community, like took the students from the school and worked in the community, and folks at the admin level of the university at that time did not understand my vision, which happens often, and were like, that's not a club. We can't fund that. And so I ended up like with this thought, like, oh, I know what we could do. Like, what if we took old books and we sold them? And we used that money to do this community thing. And it totally worked. And folks would bring us books. We would go book dumpster diving. There was a lot of schools and libraries in Philly closing at that time. And so we would go literally book dumpster diving and be finding old books and whatnot and set up our table. And so I literally started off selling books on a table outside on a corner. Not realizing like fast forward where we would like that any of this would be happening, right? But just, that current, like how do we meet the current need? And I have always told people, I was like, Harriet's runs on books, right? Like you might see us doing this and that and this and that, but we're really doing it off of the power of books. And so, yeah, that's kind of the how I got started and how I ended up in Philadelphia.
Yeah. And, one of the other things that is present is the power of community, too.
Yes.
And you talk about community a lot.
Yes.
And in a lot of different ways. So you talk about your own like personal communities and then also the way that you are building communities. And I will just say it was just like so inspiring. And I was just like, where was Jeannine when I was a teenager? I really,
I was a teenager too, child.
But I want to hear you talk a little bit about your youth conductor program and then also the Philly to Paris program.
Okay, yes.
Because I thought that was like, a way of building community for youth and, showing them how to do community building.
Absolutely. So I get to Philadelphia, and one of the main groups that I end up working with when I, like that club idea that I had that they told me wasn't really a club and that we still just did it anyway, child, because that's what I do, was working with young people who had dropped out of traditional high school. And I remember back then, the students were like my same age, right? It would be like, it was strange, but so they were like, we got to call you Miss? Absolutely,
It's Southern roots.
Yeah, absolutely you do. And so, and I remember back then pitching to that program this idea of like, what if for life skills class we took young people on like excursions around the world, and everybody was like, girl, this is North Philly, like stop playing. And as time has gone on, I never lost that thought, that idea that, I've learned more on my excursions, on my adventures. I'm here in Georgia. It's like I just telling librarian Jeannine and Gabby, I'm in a tent in Stone Mountain. I didn't know. I was like, how did I end up here? You know what I mean? I got a literal outhouse. I was like, oh my goodness. But I'm on an adventure. So I'm learning. I've learned more on the road, right? I've learned more through travel than I've learned sometimes in certain classrooms. And I was like, what better place to learn life skills than out in the world? And so once, Harriet started doing what it was doing, one of the pillars of Harriet's is that it's always run by young people. That's who when you go in there, that's typically who's working behind the desk. That's who's tying up your books. That's who's, guiding you. They're called the youth conductors. And the thought came back again, which was like, well, what if we started taking young people from Philly to Paris, right? Like, we were working on Josephine's anyway. And I was like, well, Josephine's needs to have young people running it just like Harriet's does, just like Ida's does. And yeah, the young people were totally into it. I went back to Yes Philly, which was that program I worked at years and years ago that told me that what I was saying didn't make any sense. I was like, let's do it. Now we're gonna do the program. No, I didn't do it like that. But I did re-pitch it. And it was all hands on deck. The school district of Philadelphia made it, that was a whole thing, but they did make it a credit bearing course. So the young people were able to get credit for this. And it was also a part of like why they would come to school every day, right? Because that was the real struggle with my young folks who had previously dropped out and were getting, these accelerated degrees, was that they didn't really enjoy traditional classrooms. But they did enjoy the idea of like getting a passport, and they enjoyed the idea of like going and taking this like adventure. And so for a semester, we all worked together to prepare for what that would look like. None of my students had been on an airplane. They had never been to the airport. And so there were, if you imagine going from that level of like understanding of what the world could and is to landing in Paris, France, and you're like at the Eiffel Tower, like it was a very like big experience. And that's just one of the groups, right? We ended up doing it more than once. We're still doing it. It's the whole idea, we call it the Underground Railroad, where it's like, okay, what if the passport is today's modern day freedom papers, right? And if you have that passport, it means that you have access to certain freedoms that you wouldn't have otherwise. And yeah, the young people they're all, they were saying how the enrollment at Yes Philly, or like the application, like it increased by 300%, not only just with the young people that were there and coming, but because word of mouth was spreading and people were like, I might get to go on this Paris trip next, right? So like, let me, do whatever it takes. And then folks were like, of course, grades were increasing because they were coming to school.
Yes, that's amazing.
It was and I invite, and I think, as things work, right, more and more folks get it as they get it, right? And so, with the Underground, you take a local trip, right, and you get to kind of experience what's in your vicinity. Because sometimes even just a trip outside of your, small circumference is like, whoa, I didn't know this was right here, and then you take a national trip, right? And so that feels like something you get a taste of what it means to go to the airport. You get a taste of all those things, and then you get your international trip, and we also like got the passports, and it was a community effort, right? We raised the money from the community. You see in the book how it kind of worked. We did it in 3 months that we raised all the money. So we started in September and we were in Paris by November. Yeah, it was deep. And there was all these other pieces and places and things happening in my own personal life, but also that commitment didn't go away. I had already promised these young people they were going to Paris. And so I couldn't say, oh, I don't feel like it,
Yeah.
I'm sad. They would have been like, so? So yeah.
Yeah. That's amazing. A really amazing program.
Okay, so I got a question for the group.
Yeah.
Okay, question for the group. Inkling, that same call, right? There's something inside of us all that's like I believe, when we sit still long enough, when we sit in the quiet long enough, the silence long enough, we start to hear something calling us forward. What's calling you right now? What do you hear calling? And it could be a whisper, it could be a roar. But whatever it is, what do you hear calling right now? And really, you haven't quite picked up the phone yet, but it's in there. And you got, again, 1 minute. Ready? Go. You might need an extra minute on this. Need an extra minute. Keep going. Go ahead.
Okay, so I'm gonna make, before she tries to call on you all, I'm gonna make Jeannine say hers so that she doesn't call on you all, because I really like hers. Okay.
So do yours first. Go ahead.
Mine is, I've always really wanted to like start a mentoring program for like young Black girls, like middle school age. Yeah.
I love it.
But I really love yours, so tell us what yours is.
So mine is so scary, and I was like, I don't want to do mine. I don't want to do mine. She was like, well, you can't have everybody else doing theirs, and you're not gonna do it. So I just started feeling like, well, what if I turned this into a movie? And I was like, ooh. All right, see what I'm saying? But once upon a time, writing a book felt like, you know, and once upon a time, opening a bookshop felt like, so yeah, I've been feeling it just a little inkling. Like, what if you could? What if you did? What would that be? What could that look like?
And you know what needs to make it into the movie?
What?
That did not make it into the book,
What?
even though you talked about it twice. Every time I see this woman, I have to tell her I'm mad at her. So she has alluded to twice about riding a horse and giving out books. Tell us more about that.
I will after I hear that call.
Okay, we'll hear from someone.
What we got? What's in the room? Ooh, people.
Okay, now y'all.
Yeah.
Okay.
Selling, the idea of selling like bookish apparel. I have a book club that supports Black women authors, so that's what I do. But I've always had this just inkling to do bookish apparel and a bookstore too. That's another level. But I'm always looking at buildings like, oh, that's perfect. And
That's the call.
Yeah.
And I told her right here,
You want me to give you all my money?
See, you got a whole room of people who will be like, answer the phone.
Please do it.
Answer the call. You got it. You got it. Somebody else, go ahead, my friend. You've been voluntold. We got this. There are people pointing at you.
I already have a literacy program that started about 6 years ago, but I want to turn it into a mobile reading program. So, and kind of doing events with kids and adults. But yeah, so that's been the thing. And every time I see a mobile, I'm like, that's me. That's me. So that's something that I want to do.
Answer the call.
And I'm from Jersey.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Yo, Jersey went all wild with me so my last event was in Jersey, well, one of these events. And so on Sunday, and I'm like, oh, it's probably like 20 people, 50 people came. It was wild in Jersey. I said, y'all just be acting up in Jersey. Like, Jersey is a whole different, I'm still learning how to speak Jersey. Who else I saw hands over here. Oh, go ahead, yes.
So our bookstore takes in these books, and I have so many, and we donate them to our local library, which is in Gwinnett County. But I feel like I could be doing more with.
Okay.
I have too many,
Okay.
and they just need a place to go and a way to organize them.
Okay. So you're feeling called to do something with those used books.
In my treatment. Yes.
Okay. All right. Answer the call. You already know what I'm saying at this point. Go ahead, friend.
I have two, but
Yeah, go ahead.
podcasting and voiceovers. So
Say it again one more time.
Podcasting and voiceovers. So if you need someone to read your book,
I always do.
Yeah.
I'm
Yes.
available.
Yeah. I need as many people as possible to read the book. No, no, but I got you. Yes. What's your podcast about? Maybe if you were to answer the call.
Well, right here, where all these new restaurants open, so I will go around tasting old food.
Oh, yeah.
Like salads and
Yeah. And so I hope when you see, for every one of the calls, there were and yes, and we want and you already have built-in like audience of like yeses.
No, but I really have a question that is like related to this, honestly, for you, because in the book, you talk so much about like how your writing is calling you to do one thing and your entrepreneurial spirit is calling you to do another.
Yes.
And we see even here that people are balancing like, they're one thing. They're probably, I bet people are probably like, oh, you know what? I actually do this thing for work that is not even related to this
That's
other
not the
thing.
call
that I
at all.
You know, exactly. So, I mean, what advice would you have for people? Because you really, there were times in your book that you really talked about like, ooh, you know, my writing self, the writer in me really wants to do this, but the entrepreneur in me is like, no, girl, you have to do this other thing. So like what advice would you give them? Because I mean, as you can see, Atlanta is full of entrepreneurs.
Yeah, you know, so the two have always been kind of like at odds in a way, my entrepreneur self and my writer self, right? My writer self is just more chill, laid back, da-da-da-da-da. She'll wait, you know, she'll wait. She's very patient. And my entrepreneur self is like, let's get it. You know, like it's like she's just hyped up like that. And I think what's interesting is that with my writer self, her being so like, well, I'll wait. After a while, I gave her, you know, she had Paris to her. I gave her Paris. And in Paris, she got to be her fullest self. And she got to like take walks and be calm, and you know there was no like deadlines, and like you know I didn't have the phone, I didn't have the urgency of all the things. Like I mean today I landed in Atlanta, I mean, and people was just on me. Like I was like, oh my gosh, my author self and my entrepreneur self are at odds today, you know, because they were like, you know, Jeannine, somebody's walking on the roof of the bookshop, what are we gonna do, you know? I'm like, I am not there. There is a property manager. You gotta, you know, the author is doing the writer self is at work right now. And I think for a long time, the entrepreneur self, the financial engine was like, we gotta make money, we gotta survive, and the writer self turns out that she also had her own way of doing the same things, and it might not be so forceful and aggressive, but it was still possible, right? Like, and what she was able to do in a much shorter period of time is just as important and impactful. Yeah, and so just like giving myself different time to shine, making space for themselves.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So the last question I have for you before we do our activity.
They're like, what is this thing? What is this book talk?
They're like, what is this activity that we're doing?
Book talk is very,
it's wild.
got me talking. I was like, anybody here sing? Because I will, okay. I will call a singer up in a minute.
Yeah, we were talking about, you know, everybody's like, what's next? And I really hate the question about like, what's next? Because I feel like people ask me that all the time and I'm like, I don't know.
Right.
I just want to get to the
doing
next
this
day.
Right now. Right.
But what is something you want to say yes to this year?
I'm saying yes to quietness, to silence. For Harriet Tubman Day, I do a vow of silence every year where it's just like no talking. And I'm still in the shop, so people are like, what is this? And then after a while, they start being like, you know, like now they can't talk because I can't talk. I'm like, you can say whatever you need to say. But yeah, so just more silence, more quiet, more ease, more allowing, you know. Like I said, my entrepreneur stuff is up on a horse, like, you're the fire horse, let's go, you know. But my writer stuff is like, you know, let's let it come to us, right? We don't chase, we allow. And I'm letting her kind of run the show a little bit more. Yeah. So just quiet. I'm good with that. I went to Japan like maybe 3 weeks ago. That's why I got this frock.
Oh, very lovely.
And Japan is really quiet. You know, it's a really quiet, clean place. You don't really do a lot of talking out in public. So there's like no talking on the train and on the, yeah. And I was like, oh, I could get with this. You know, somebody wrote me, it was like, oh, that place is great for somebody with your condition. And I was like, what's my condition? You know? But just the fact that I like quiet, you know? And I just think when I'm there, I can hear better, you know? So being in that space more often, so I can hear if there is something next, I can hear it, and I'm not so like, I'm not filling the noise like filling everything with noise constantly. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that.
Thank you.
Okay, so finally for our activity. So I asked Jeannine if she could read one of my favorite parts of the book. And as you can see, she's all about community. So this is where you're going to get out your copy of the book and you're going to turn to page 197. And we are going to do a group reading of the Liturgy of Literacy. So what we'll do is we'll just sort of read one line at a time, and we'll just do popcorn style for the folks that have, or what did you say? Round robin is what you said. For the folks that have the book until we get to the end. It's not too long, so it won't take us too long. Gina, I promise we'll be right on time.
No, I think the Jersey people should start first.
Because they speak Jersey. See, you must speak a little Jersey. Sometimes I don't get it, but okay.
Okay.
And so we'll just move, you'll move, you'll feel it.
Yeah.
You'll feel it. And there's somebody sitting next to you, close to you. So even if you don't have one in your hand, boom.
Get close.
Friendship, community. Ready?
And
yeah.
Liturgy of literacy.
Holy Mothers.
Full of grace. Blessed be Saint Maya of Stamps, daughter of Bailey.
Blessed be Saint Phyllis of Angel, daughter of Saviors.
Blessed be Saint Lorraine of Lanning, daughter of the God.
Grant us your presence.
Now and in the hour of death, our deaths.
How much have we learned from our predecessors, the keepers of thine word, of their accounts of the ancients, and have found it written in their acts. This day let it be anointed by the great appointed and accepted tribunal gathering of elders, that endowed within their wisdom is the right to declare, debate, and decree on the veneration of our lettered saints.
Holy Mothers.
full of grace.
Blessed be Saint Zora of Nostalgia, who watches God.
Blessed be Saint Belle of Drea, who's devoted to love for the fruits of Nebius.
Blessed be Saint Tony of Lorraine, who held words holy and characters charitably, made worthy when on earth to possess a miraculous path.
Encouraged by this thought, we implore you to obtain for us.
Now and in the hour of our death, sacred land, sacred space, sacred communion.
So of you desirous of participating in so holy a work, be implored to decide with whom you walk and with whom you invoke. We give heed to your devotion and beseech you to prepare a presentation of the names of the martyrs and the miraculous in whom you brought the tribunal to debate and decree. Holy Mothers,
Full of grace.
Blessed be Saint June of Architecture, solid gospel sanctified.
Blessed be Saint Margaret of Birmingham, daughter of famine, and jubilee.
Blessed be Saint Faith of Char, daughter of textiles and posy.
Grant us your presence.
Now and in the hour of our deaths.
Now I lay me down to sleep.
I pray the Lord my soul to keep.
If I should die before I wake,
I pray the Lord my soul to him.
grant you by these present documents of our full universal hope, free permission to circulate, petition, and submit confirmation to members of the Divine Water Florida. Accountability. Concretization. Holy Mothers.
Full of grace.
Blessed be Saint Lucille of Depew, the elegist.
Blessed be Saint Gwendolyn, the chronicler, daughter of Keziah and Shikara.
Blessed be Octavia of Spiritus, daughter of Trilogy and Pasadena.
Grant us your presence.
Now and in the hour of our deaths. Take this. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Take this as your buckler of protection as ye go forth. Amen.
Ashe.
Whew, every time.
Thank you all.
Always so beautiful.
Thank you all so much for indulging me in community. That was so beautiful.
So there are several women writers in that passage that you can kind of go on their journey, if you so choose, and pick apart why they were named what they were named. And also, like, the folks have asked me about that piece, and the idea of taking on the right and responsibility of venerating our own ancestors, not leaving that up to somebody else, and not expecting for somebody else to get that right when that's not really their position. And that's kind of like the root of how that piece came to be.
Yeah, thank you so much for writing. It was beautiful.
And thank y'all for lending your voices to the words.
Yes,
thank you so much.
Thank you. Yes.
Yes.
And we want to now open it up for questions.
Yes.
I just wanted to say I first learned about you and Harriet's from reading Peggy Mitchell's book. And then when I learned that Gina was bringing you for the last book, It's Vision Follow, I read it. I loved it. I shared that with you before. And I know this one will be no different. So I guess my question is, how long before you shut up and write another book?
I really don't know, but Ashley, my publicist is up in here. I'm like, Ashley, what you got? Like, what you think? I don't know. I'm always writing. You know, I'm always thinking. I have a list of books that I'd like to write. And even with the memoir, like I said, it's only 4 months of a very long life, which is not that long of a life, but long enough, right? And so you only get, a very kind of like truncated version of what my life is. But Miss Marie is in the book is she's my agent, but she's also, I think I might have mentioned her the last time we were all together, she's an octogenarian, meaning like she's in her, mid 80s and has been in publishing for longer than, my mama was born. She was like, girl, I'm your grandmother in this world. And so one of the advice that she gave me that I'll share with you all, especially anybody in the space that, is a writer or aspires to write, or you hear a little call when it comes to writing, is that she was like, Maya Angelou wrote 8 memoirs. Right? Don't feel like you have to stop or limit yourself, or that this is your one chance and you have to put everything in this one text, right? You can, and this was another thing that I got along this journey is I was in Nairobi and, I got to Nairobi and they were like, Jeannine, you ready to go party? And I'm like, yes, I'm ready to go party. And they were like, but you got to pass it. And I was like, what is that? And they were like, you got to pace yourself. Right? We party different in Nairobi. We're going to be partying for days, okay? So don't come in here thinking you about this is not Philly, it's not the last call at 2 a.m. You know what I mean? Like, so that's the same thing the advice that I share with writers is that in any of your goals and dreams and desires is that same sense of like, pasa pasa, it's like, I just did this, I'm pacing myself. The book only been out for a week. I've already done 9 cities, right? And so, yeah, pasa pasa. It's coming. It's coming. Yeah, it's coming though. I do believe there's more. Any other questions?
In the same vein, will the screen filming come through?
With the what?
The filming of the screen for the book.
Oh, I didn't know that we were. Okay, we speaking it over.
Calling it.
Yes, okay. We're speaking it as though it were. you know, you're now maybe a part of another book. I don't know. There might be the book called The Book Tour. And it's just like, and then I got the Stone Mountain and they put me in a tent, you know what I mean? I don't know. We don't know where it will take us. But another piece of advice that I was given was, you know, each of the stops, you know, make a note. What did you experience? What did you see? What did you feel? Who did you meet? Like, so everything's I'm still documenting all of these experiences. Because when they're happening so quickly, sometimes it just feels like it's washing over you. And so that's another thing that I've kind of been keeping track of. But who knows, you know, I might be down here in a horse, you know. I don't know. I don't really know. It's like it happens sometimes faster than I know that it's coming. Another one?
Can you share one of the stories of one of the students that came through your program and how it transformed their lives, maybe one?
So many. Okay, I have so many young people, but there's Anya who I like to talk about because Anya came to the bookshop at 14. There's two things I always remember about Anya. First of all, her and the bookshop have the same birthday. So, you know, February 1st is her birthday. So I always remember that. But then also when she first came, she was just like, I'm here, but I don't like to read. And I was like, that's okay, Anya, you're here and you're gonna read. No, sure. And then the other thing was, I remember her telling me, she showed me her arms and she was just like, and look how skinny my arms are. I can't carry all those boxes. And I said, oh no, you can't carry all those boxes. Yes, you can, Anya. Yes, you can and you will, you know. And so Anya was she's such a special young person to walk into those doors. Because she's so diligent though. So even though she supposedly didn't like to read, supposedly was too weak to carry the boxes, supposedly like all these like things that she told herself about herself when she started. Anya child now is, and she's from an area in Philadelphia. And if you've ever been to Philly or you know about this area, it's called Kensington, right? Which is a highly, it's an area that's like very awash with drugs. Some people call it the beach because there's so many people laid out on the ground. And Anya, and I would be like, Anya, you know, she would come in and tell me stories about like this what she traversed to get to the bookshop. And I'm like, Anya, are you serious? You know, she'd be like, yeah, Miss Jeannine, but you know, you told me I had to be here at 10 o'clock. So I mean, you know, she's just that young person. And now she's at Johns Hopkins.
Okay.
Anya got a full ride to Johns Hopkins. And then she got a full ride to continue her medical degree there. Right. And Anya, by the time I was done, Anya was building bookshops herself. Right. She was going and doing pop-ups on her own, carrying boxes. Every time I see her with a box, I'd be like, oh, what? You know, and just like getting over those kind of preconceived notions about who she was and what people told her. And then also, I remember Anya, when she first got this little boyfriend, and I'm sorry, Anya, you about to be all on video and whatnot. But I remember when she first got that little boyfriend and she was just like, Miss Jeannine. I said, yeah. She was like, we reading all about love together. And I was like, oh, okay. So, now you like to read, huh? You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, that's just one of them. There's so many young people, so many cool stories, so many. And then there's also stories where I'm like, why you do that? You know what I mean? And there are stories like that in the book as well. Where it's just like, come on, nephew, we right here, you know? And so a little bit of both. I call him nephew, right? He was essential in Philly to Paris, and he writes this amazing essay, which is in the text, about why it's so important and how it can change the lives of young people. And he talks about starting to carry a gun when he was 12 years old and why and and how this is, you know, and I mean, he goes in on that. And then, you know, right, we petitioned the courts and all this stuff around his probation, everything, got him to be able to go to Philly to Paris. And right before it's time to go, nephew goes back and gets locked up. And I was like, damn, nephew, you know, like, so there's also, you know, it's not every story is not that. I mean, and nephew is still a success story in his own right, in a different right. But there are heartbreaks, as anybody who works with young people knows. Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about opening your first bookshop, when that whisper went to that roar and you had that tug to actually do it, and what your next steps were?
Yeah. So opening was a little bit wild. So just so for context, I don't know if everyone knows that Harriet's opened 6 weeks before the pandemic. And that, again, back to that call, right? Like, had I waited and said, oh, I'm gonna wait another month. There would be no bookshop, right? And I invite and implore people when there is that call to answer the phone. That's why I harp on it so much, because I get the difference in like what my life would have been had I just like kept hesitating or gave myself another month. You know what I mean? The shop opens, and in my mind, so Harriet's is 500 square feet originally, right? Oh, after several years, we go on to actually buy the entire building, thanks to the community. But when we first opened, it was just this 500 square foot space in a part of town that wasn't very popular, especially for people who look like me, and kind of lived on the out. It was closer to Kensington than most people would want to be, right? And so it was also. So that meant that it was cheaper to do it. And I thought I actually in my mind told myself this is a writing studio, and that I was working remotely before COVID and all of that stuff. I was doing curriculum development. So I was working with American Friends, and they were sending me places, and I was like, oh, well, I'm sitting in cafes all day anyway. What if I just kind of do this little writing studio? It kind of adds up to how much I'm spending on coffee. So I just didn't think of it in any way that I think of where we are today. I just was like, okay, here's this little step, right? And it was just little steps, little tiny steps. One day a woman came in asking me a ton of questions. Well, why do you have incense burning? I've never seen that in a bookshop. Or, like just all these questions. And I was just like, damn, you got a lot of questions, man. So I'm trying to write. Not realizing that woman was actually a reporter. And she did a story on Harriet's before Harriet's was Harriet's. And so the little bit of books I had, which were my books, I started with my own books now, child. That was the other thing. Like when you talk about your used books back there, like I just had a lot. I just had what I had. Mm-hmm. And I was just like, and there's something to bringing your first fruits to a situation, because that's all I had. And I was like, I'm not selling these, but these I'm okay with, you know what I mean? And that's really that was the beginning of everything. And that article, people came in and bought all that stuff that I had, and that was before we opened. Mm-hmm. So then I was like, damn, what do I do? You know what I mean? Because now I done sold the little that I thought we was going to use the I remember we didn't have a point of sale system. There were so many things I didn't even think about or know about too. So by the time COVID hit and they were like, well, where's your certificate of occupancy? I was like, my what? But I learned along the way. I made a lot of mistakes. I still make a lot of mistakes, right? There's no perfection in this, and that's okay. And that was kind of the trajectory. And so then COVID hit, and the mayor sends us all a email of some sort that says no more, close the doors, shut that down. And I went in the back and just like weeped and cried on the floor, like this is it. This is it. I can't do nothing else. Like I just put you know what I mean? You put your last into your last, and it was just like, I can't do this. Even though so many people had come to the opening, but then once, if y'all remember before COVID was COVID and people started slowly like, I don't want to go out. I don't know what's happening. People were getting sick, I was like, hand sanitizer to walk in the door. It was just like, you felt it squeezing in. Way before it had actually like been announced that it was over. Or that the doors were closed. And I think, again, back to the quiet, the silence, and sitting in there by myself in the silence. We got a big, there's this painting of Harriet Tubman that I found in a thrift store, by the way. And it's a big one that hangs on the wall. And I'm sitting under the painting and I'm just looking at Harriet, and I'm just like, what is this? This is not a part of what part of the game is that? And I remember just this inkling, getting back to, it was just like, well, just take everything outside and just build the bookshop outside. They didn't say you couldn't build it outside. They said people couldn't come inside. And I was like, what? That's like the horses. The horses was just like, oh, I gotta be 6 feet apart. Okay, I'm 6 foot high. You know what I mean? It was like those kind of weird Jeannine moments. And so I would build the bookshop outside and then run inside, early in the morning, and then run inside, lock the door, and it was all honor system grab and go. And that was another one of those, and people would just like cash at me. I couldn't believe people would come, like all head wrapped up, like, you know, but it's like I still need my books. And I'm like, yeah, I was like, you know what, what'll save the earth, what'll save the world at the end. You know, if this is the end of times and it's over, at least everybody's got a book, you know, everybody's reading, you know what I mean? And people came, and then somebody sent that to Oprah, and it was like, right? So those kind of moments where you're thinking you're like literally like, and that Oprah thing then ballooned into its own thing. Then it was MSNBC was like, oh, well, let's do a 6-part series on how do you keep your business open during COVID? Because who takes all their stuff outside and just says, honestly, who does this? You know what I mean? And I'm not talking about just books. I would build whole sets outside. I was taking shelves and da-da-da. And I was doing it like, you know, early in the morning before people were outside. So I would be out there just like, you know, just building this thing, and then, you know, then rain. You were like, oh my gosh, like the elements. It was a very kind of chaotic moment, but also I just had that drive, that mechanism to keep going. After I got off the floor, you know what I mean? Yeah, right.
Yeah, wonderful.
Was that a wrap?
Yeah. Yep.
Oh, okay.
Right
That was a wrap. I don't know. So,
We're right on time.
I didn't know if you had a question. No.
But that was a good one, and thank you.
Thank you.
So with that, let's please give them another round of applause.
Thank y'all so much.